Aston Martin just finished preseason testing, and they are 4 seconds per lap slower. 4 seconds. In modern Formula One, that is not a small gap. That is a crisis. This was supposed to be the dream team. Adrian Newey designing the car. Honda returning with a brand new hybrid power unit. Fernando Alonso leading the charge. Instead, the AMR26 looked slow, fragile, and at times, undrivable. The car overheated after only a few laps. The hybrid system failed to recharge properly. The battery reportedly shut down under aggressive harvesting. And on long straights, the electric boost simply disappeared. Half the power. Gone. And here is the insane part. Some inside the paddock believe the engine is not the only problem. Honda says the chassis is too tight. Newey says the power unit does not meet minimum recovery targets. So who is right? Because preseason testing is officially over. There is no more hiding. No more experimental excuses. Australia is next. And if this issue is not solved immediately, Aston Martin could start the season fighting just to qualify. Stay until the end, because the truth behind Aston Martin Honda's poor pace is far more serious than just bad lap times. This might be the beginning of something nobody in green saw coming. Let's start with what actually happened in testing. Because the lap times alone do not tell the full story. Barcelona was supposed to be routine. A controlled rollout. A quiet introduction of the AMR26. Instead, the first warning signs appeared almost immediately. The car arrived late. Assembly delays. The rear packaging, designed under Adrian Newey's extreme compact philosophy, was so tight that installing auxiliary components became a logistical challenge. That is not just inconvenience. That is a risk indicator. They completed minimal mileage. Overheating appeared early, even in relatively cool conditions. At the time, it was described as system checks. But when a hybrid system struggles in mild weather, you do not blame the weather. You question the architecture. Then Bahrain exposed everything. Desert heat. Longer runs. Realistic race simulations. On the first day, Lance Stroll's car entered protective mode after limited laps. Power reduction. System alarms. Forced shutdown. Fernando Alonso experienced similar issues. Short runs. Cooling periods. No rhythm. And rhythm is everything in preseason testing. You are not just chasing lap times. You are validating reliability, collecting data, understanding tire behavior, fine-tuning balance. Aston Martin could not do that, because the core issue was not mechanical grip. It was energy. In this new regulation era, roughly half of total performance depends on electrical deployment. If the battery does not recharge efficiently under braking, you are effectively driving with half a car. And that is what began happening. On acceleration, the car felt normal for the first part of the straight. Then the electrical support faded abruptly. Extreme clipping. Drivers described it as the car losing breath. Which leads to the technical heart of the problem. Thermal instability inside the energy store. Under aggressive harvesting, battery temperatures spiked beyond safe thresholds. The software responded exactly as designed. It reduced energy intake to prevent catastrophic failure. But safety mode means no recharge. No recharge means no deployment. And no deployment means no competitiveness. This is not a small calibration error. It is systemic. To make matters worse, the extreme compact bodywork restricted airflow to critical hybrid cooling components. Honda engineers argue that the chassis packaging suffocates the system. Newey's camp suggests the power unit should tolerate those constraints. That is not just engineering disagreement. That is structural misalignment between design philosophy and power unit capability. And then there were the vibrations. At certain engine speeds, harmonic resonance created violent shaking. Sensors malfunctioned. Mountings showed stress signs. When you combine vibration, thermal instability, and energy clipping, the result is not just slow pace. It is limited learning. They were forced into short stints. One push lap. Then cool down. Then adjustments. Meanwhile, rivals completed full race simulations. Collected tire degradation data. Tested strategy scenarios. Aston Martin could not. And that is the hidden damage of preseason problems. Lost knowledge. Lost preparation. Fernando Alonso was visibly frustrated. Not dramatic. Not theatrical. Just realistic. Because he understands that even if Honda delivers a revised battery specification for Australia, emergency fixes often reduce peak output to protect reliability. Which means the car might become stable. But slower. So here is the uncomfortable truth. The poor pace we saw was not random. It was a symptom of deeper integration failure between chassis and hybrid system. The AMR26 may be aerodynamically efficient in theory. But without consistent energy recovery, efficiency does not matter. And with testing now officially over, there is limited time to redesign cooling architecture before Melbourne. Software adjustments can mitigate. Hardware redesign takes months. So as we approach the first race, Aston Martin is not asking how to win. They are asking how to survive. And the real concern is not whether they are 4 seconds slower in February. It is whether that gap shrinks or stays. Because if the hybrid system remains unstable under race conditions, Australia will not be a comeback story. It will be confirmation. But here is where the situation becomes even more serious. Because this is not just about overheating. It is about a philosophy clash. Adrian Newey designed the AMR26 around extreme efficiency, ultra-tight bodywork, minimal drag, maximum aerodynamic purity. The so-called size zero concept was meant to give Aston Martin a structural advantage on the straights and in high-speed corners. But extreme packaging only works if the power unit can operate inside those thermal constraints. And right now, it cannot. Honda's internal position is clear. The hybrid system works within expected parameters when given proper cooling flow. Restrict that airflow, and temperatures rise beyond predicted simulation values. Newey's position is equally clear. A championship-level power unit must tolerate aggressive packaging. This is not a minor setup disagreement. This is a design philosophy conflict between two elite engineering cultures. And when that happens at the very beginning of a regulation cycle, the consequences can last all season. Now consider the timeline. Testing is over. Australia is days away. You cannot redesign a rear-end architecture in a week. You cannot fundamentally reshape cooling channels without aerodynamic consequences. So what are the options? First, software mitigation. Honda can soften harvesting rates, reduce peak charging cycles, limit aggressive energy recovery under braking. That would stabilize battery temperatures. But it would also reduce available deployment, which means slower acceleration. Second, emergency bodywork revisions. Open larger cooling exits. Widen the engine cover slightly. Sacrifice aerodynamic efficiency for thermal stability. But that destroys the very concept Newey built the car around. Third, conservative race mapping. Run lower power modes to avoid vibration and thermal stress. That improves reliability, but locks in performance deficit. Every solution involves sacrifice. And this is where the psychological pressure begins to mount. Fernando Alonso did not join this project to fight for midfield survival. He joined because he believed in the vision. But drivers feel power loss instantly. They feel clipping on the straight. They feel instability in braking zones when regeneration changes. Confidence erodes quickly when the car cannot deliver consistent performance. And Lance Stroll, who has often been criticized for inconsistency, now finds himself in a situation where the machinery itself is inconsistent. That makes evaluation impossible. Then there is the political layer. Lawrence Stroll invested heavily in this partnership. State-of-the-art factory. Elite technical leadership. High expectations. If the engine supplier and chassis designer are already subtly blaming each other before race 1, internal tension will escalate. Because once media narratives pick up the story, pressure multiplies. And rivals are watching closely. Red Bull and Ferrari are not worried about Aston Martin's lap time. They are watching whether this partnership fractures. Because if development direction becomes divided, progress slows dramatically. Now think ahead. Even if Honda delivers a revised battery specification for Melbourne, it will likely be conservative, safer, more robust, but less aggressive in peak output. Which means Aston Martin may stabilize around the lower midfield rather than collapse completely. But that is not the objective they had. The objective was to challenge. Instead, the current goal may simply be finishing races. And here is the deeper truth. Preseason testing is not just about speed. It is about understanding your platform. Ferrari left testing knowing their weakness is thermal sensitivity. They know what to fix. Aston Martin left testing still debating the root cause. Is it cooling architecture? Battery chemistry? Vibration harmonics? Energy management software? If you are still defining the problem, you are already behind. And this is why the poor pace revealed something insane. It revealed that the project may have advanced too aggressively on aerodynamic ambition without fully validating hybrid integration under real-world heat conditions. That is not incompetence. That is misalignment. And misalignment at this level is extremely expensive to correct. So as we approach Australia, the key question is no longer how fast the AMR26 can go in perfect conditions. It is whether it can function consistently under race pressure. Because if the hybrid system once again limits deployment halfway down the straight, if vibration returns under aggressive throttle, if emergency cooling compromises aero balance, Then the preseason warning becomes confirmation. And confirmation changes everything. This season was meant to mark a new beginning for Aston Martin Honda. Instead, preseason testing may have exposed just how fragile that beginning really is. And now the entire paddock waits to see whether Australia brings recovery, or proof that the dream partnership started with a fundamental flaw. And now we reach the point nobody inside Aston Martin wants to say out loud. Time. Because technical problems can be solved. But they require mileage. They require stable baseline data. They require long runs, repeatable conditions, and correlation between simulation and reality. Aston Martin did not get that. While Ferrari completed the equivalent of multiple race weekends, while Red Bull fine-tuned tire wear patterns and energy curves, Aston Martin spent valuable hours inside the garage, cooling the car, replacing components, running diagnostic checks. That is lost development time. And in a regulation reset year, lost time compounds fast. Here is the brutal dynamic of modern Formula One. If you begin the season 2 or 3 races behind in understanding your package, you are not just slower. You are chasing development direction. You are spending wind tunnel time correcting issues instead of improving performance. You are allocating budget to reliability instead of upgrades. And that shift changes the entire trajectory of a season. Now imagine Australia. If the team runs conservative engine maps to avoid overheating, they sacrifice straight-line speed. If they open up cooling aggressively, they increase drag. If they push the system too hard, they risk another energy shutdown mid-race. None of those scenarios scream confidence. And confidence matters. Drivers feel it. Engineers feel it. Sponsors feel it. Fernando Alonso has lived through this before. He remembers the early days of a struggling hybrid partnership. He understands how long it takes to recover from foundational integration issues. His frustration in Bahrain was not theatrical. It was analytical. He knows that hybrid recovery efficiency is not a small tuning variable. It is the backbone of the entire performance model. And then there is Adrian Newey. For decades, his designs have maximized aerodynamic purity. But this new era demands harmony between aero and hybrid. You cannot design in isolation anymore. The electric component is too central. If the power unit cannot operate comfortably inside the aerodynamic concept, either the engine evolves rapidly, or the chassis philosophy must soften. And softening a philosophy is never easy, especially when expectations were sky high. The partnership was marketed as revolutionary. Instead, preseason revealed vulnerability. Now here is the part that truly changes the perspective. Honda has admitted their simulation tools did not perfectly replicate real-world thermal behavior. That is not a small admission. That means predictive modeling failed under race-level stress. When simulation and reality diverge, engineers lose confidence in development direction. Because every adjustment becomes a question mark. Are we fixing the cause? Or masking the symptom? This uncertainty is more dangerous than raw pace deficit. Because performance gaps can be measured. Uncertainty cannot. So what does this all reveal? The poor pace was not simply about being slow. It revealed that the integration between chassis and hybrid system may not yet be mature. It revealed that the dream partnership is still in its infancy. And it revealed that Australia will not just be a race. It will be a stress test. If the revised battery specification stabilizes temperatures, if vibration maps are refined, if emergency cooling solutions do not destroy aerodynamic balance, then this preseason nightmare becomes a painful but temporary chapter. But if the same symptoms reappear, if energy clipping returns under real race pressure, if performance deficit remains measured in seconds instead of tenths, then the insane truth becomes undeniable. The project was not ready. And in Formula One, readiness is everything. Because the grid does not wait. Development does not pause. Rivals do not slow down.